Good afternoon. Hello. Just letting everything do its thing, do its mojo here with both platforms. I'm going live on Instagram as well as Facebook. First, I want to say thank you to everybody who was planning on joining me live at 1 for being flexible. I had to push this back to 1:30 because of mom life. So I've had a lot going on. My kiddos got back a little bit late from their activities and needed some extra love because they've just were missing mommy. So needed to do some snuggles and recentering before I could hop into this live and be able to just really give everything that I got for this for your training today. So for those of you who don't know me or are new to either one of my platforms here, my name is Jessie Sletton and I am your postpartum empowerment coach. I help folks who are expecting their little one in the next 3 to 6 months feel as calm, prepared, comforted, nourished, and just confident in their transition into their postpartum time frame. I work with folks either one-on-one in a 6-month one-on-one container where we cover everything. It is my comprehensive plan where we do birth planning all the way to postpartum planning. We do a nutrition program together and coaching, and we also have lactation support and implementation of the plans that we've created once baby is here. So it is a fully comprehensive perinatal support package. I also help folks in a group setting. I have a program called the P4 program. That's what I call it. It's easier to say than the big long name, but the big long name is Preparing for Parenthood Postpartum Planning Program. And it is solely focused on preparing for the postpartum time frame. We create your postpartum plan. You have a group of other parents who are going through similar experiences, so you have that community available, and you will leave that program with a fully customized postpartum plan, and you get coaching support in a group setting for 3 months from me. So those are the ways you can work with me. I also offer lactation services that are completely separate from my programs. So if your little one is already here and you're looking for some infant feeding support, that's some ways that I can also support you. So I am truly a jack of all trades when it comes to postpartum, but my passion really lies in creating that feeling of confidence and being prepared for your postpartum time frame and really feeling like you are centered during this really vulnerable, beautiful, and challenging time. So if you're interested in working together, the first step is booking a call with me, and you can find that for my Instagram folks in my bio. My Facebook people, you can find it right in the description of this training video as well as the pinned comment below. So those are that's a link to my calendar, and if there's a spot that just does not work for you or a time frame that would work better, DM me. My inbox is always open, and I am happy to have that conversation with you and to set aside a time that would work for both of our schedules. So today's training is a continuation on a topic that we started last week, and this is really about the importance of having conversations about parental load and baby care and all of these things that we just assume our partners are on the same page with us on. And this is a very big mistake that many of us make. And the reason it is a big mistake is because it has huge impacts, not only on your ability to heal and focus on your own nourishment and, bonding time with baby in the very fresh postpartum time frame, but it also has huge impacts on your relationship overall, the satisfaction that you and your partner have with the relationship now that you're moving into this new chapter together as parents. We talked all about the importance and the benefits of having these discussions before baby arrives last week. This week, today, we are going to get a little bit deeper into actually how to have successful conversations about these topics. This is a whole big thing, and we do a lot of focusing on this in my one-on-one container as well as my group program. But today I wanted to share my 3 favorite strategies for having these conversations go the way you want them to with your partner, and why, and to do it before baby arrives. And then you get into the practice of this before birth, and it becomes a little bit more second nature for you and your partner to have these discussions as you're moving through your parenthood together, and to really stay grounded and to stay open and with an open heart and an open ear for one another when you need to do some checking in. So that is what we're going to be covering today. And if you have any questions as we're going along, feel free to drop those. Say hello if you're joining me live. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from and how far along you are in your perinatal journey. I'd love to hear more about you. I'm going to be drinking a lot of water today during this training because I was out in my garden all morning, and I am just, first of all, I'm exhausted, and second of all, I'm really dehydrated. So I'm trying to catch up on my water. All right, so let's dive in. So strategy or tip number 1 that I want to kick this off with is, first and foremost, we've got to define the roles and responsibilities, right? And we begin these discussions by looking at what you're already doing, both you and your partner. Who's doing what around the house? Who's responsible for appointment setting? So things like getting the oil changed, or staying on top of medication runs, or doctor's appointment scheduling. There's so many things that can go into this bucket, right? And there's several exercises that I do with my clients to really kind of tease out as much as possible, because you will be very shocked if you've never sat down to write out everything you are doing, how much you are actually doing. And this goes for both partners, right? So I want you to work on creating a list for each of you about what you're already currently doing. And then I want you to come together and discuss that, and then add to these lists things that you know will be, new responsibilities, or things that will have to come up because of the baby, right? So anything related to baby care. You need to be having discussions around, who's going to be doing what when it comes to the baby care. Who's going to be doing the feeding? Who is going to be doing the diaper changing? Who's going to be doing the, laundry and setting appointments for baby with their pediatrician, and all of these things, okay? You need to have detailed discussions as much as possible. It's a little bit challenging when you've never had a baby before and this is your first pregnancy and postpartum experience. You don't know what you don't know, right? And that's why it's so helpful to work with somebody, to work with me really, on how to be prepared on what those things are, and those vast lists of things that are important for you and your partner to understand and to get out on the table. Right? And so once you've defined those and you've got your lists, it's important to then take the conversation to, okay, let's divide these in a way that works the best for our family. Perfect life, perfect scenario would be perfectly equal, right? But sometimes that just isn't possible, and other times that actually doesn't work very well for some people, because, and this is why, you are going to each have your own preferences, strengths, your own struggles, or things that are a little bit harder for you. And then you're going to be able to really also look at your availability. So you're going to want to talk about, all right, we have all these things. What does the maternity leave look like? What does the parental leave look like for both of you? What does that mean? How are things going to shift and change when one or both of us go back to work, right? So you can see that these conversations are very in-depth, and you might have to have more than one, right? And you might have to take time apart to really construct your own list and then come back together. There's different ways that you can approach these conversations with your partner. But the bottom line is, the goal is to define the roles and responsibilities and to highlight your strengths and what you are really efficient and good at, and the things that you might struggle with a little bit more, and seeing if those match up with some of your strengths from your partner, right? This will really help make sure that you and your partner are contributing as equitably as possible, right? Or at least in a way that feels manageable for you both. And it really helps prevent misunderstandings and especially resentment later on down the line. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make when they are trying to prepare for their birth and their postpartum time frame, is not having these discussions. And what ends up happening is your marriage suffers greatly. You don't have those communication pathways established before birth. And so when things start piling up, and it might be very overwhelming, and you're exhausted because baby has been up all night, and maybe you're trying to chest feed, right? And so you feel like you are just a milk machine, right? And all you can do is feed the baby, but then all this other stuff is piling up, and you start to get resentful because your partner isn't aware, or you haven't had these discussions around how you want to approach these things, right? Okay, this is a very, very big topic, but those are kind of the highlights for the strategy number 1 around defining the roles and responsibilities. Tip number 2 is you are going to want to really practice listening with an open heart. So active listening is the foundation for effective communication. And it's so important for us to be able to practice these skills. This is something that a lot of us are not very good at because we haven't practiced it very often. Some of us are really good at it, and this is just a strength that we have, and so that's wonderful too. But you need to keep up with those practicing skills, because when things get chaotic, and I can guarantee you that there are going to be moments in postpartum and parenthood in general where things are going to feel like pure chaos. To be able to effectively communicate what you need and what you need from your partner, and to be able to listen to one another's needs, you need to be coming at it with an open heart and to practice those active listening skills. So this really helps you build this environment within your marriage and your family as a whole where both partners feel heard and valued and respected. And it really helps you shift from that like mode of focusing on all the negative things and all the things that aren't going right, to be able to shift that a bit to a more problem solving and solution finding lens, right? And so that's where we want to get, is we want to be able to effectively troubleshoot and problem solve and be able to communicate with one another to be able to move forward. So one of my favorite frameworks, and this can be a whole nother training on its own, but this is one of the things that I really work with my clients on as far as a communication framework, is called nonviolent communication. And it's kind of like sounds scary, like an off-putting, like, what do you mean nonviolent? Like, I'm not going to be like in my partner's face, right? Like, that's not what it means. Nonviolent communication is really just based on the principles of empathy and compassion, and really just the goal of resolution of conflicts by expressing and receiving honest feelings and needs with one another. So it's really just the foundation of having empathy and avoiding blame or criticizing voices and words, and really just things that kind of throw judgment or blame, right? And that's what it means by non-violent communication, is we're avoiding some of those more triggering ways of talking about how you're feeling and what you need, and we're replacing those with these approaches of connection and understanding and empathy. So that's what nonviolent communication in a nutshell really is. So really quickly, the 3 main ways or principles for nonviolent communication are, you're really going to be practicing that empathy and active listening like we just talked about. So that's a big piece of it, which we've already talked a lot in depth about. Then the second piece is really using I statements to express your feelings. So I don't know about you guys, but when I was kind of going through some training on nonviolent communication, I had these like triggering things from when I was in middle school, right? Let me tell you why. So I remember a school counselor coming in, and we were going to learn, and I don't know if this was like when they were starting to really, get going with this idea of nonviolent communication, but they did it in a way that wasn't really correct with my school. So they would practice these I statements, right? I feel. And then the next part of it was when you, okay? We don't want to use that framework when it comes to setting these up. We really just want to talk from a place of our own feelings and like expressing your own expectations or concerns, and really avoid that second piece with the, accusatory tone or placing the blame on the other person. So here's an example that you can do, okay? So let's say one of the problem areas or the things that you are seeing that you are mostly responsible for are a lot of the household chores, okay? So doing the dishes and laundry. Well, in the postpartum time frame, your goal as the birth giver is to focus on recovery, okay? So a lot of these household things that you might be responsible for right now, they need to be delegated, whether that's to your partner or somewhere else. And we've done a lot of other talks about that, and there's a whole nother aspect of figuring out your postpartum support team. But the fact of the matter is that during this time frame, it should not be really something that you're focused on, right? And so instead of saying something like, you never help with the household chores, or you never do the laundry, or you never do the dishes, right? That's very accusatory, that's placing blame. Instead, you want to say something to the effect of, I feel overwhelmed when I have to manage the household chores on my own. Okay, so you are owning that feeling and expressing how that is overwhelming for you, or how that experience is for you, right? Then the next part of the nonviolent communication framework is really seeking to find win-win solutions and collaborating as a team. So one of the things that I like to use is, I don't really know if this is like a good way to describe it, but I like to call it as a request question, okay? So you're gonna reframe what you need in a question back to your partner. And this really is helpful because it's one, non-threatening, which is what we want with the nonviolent communication framework, right? It encourages that collaboration and really kind of empowers your partner who's on the receiving end to feel like they are a part of the solution. And it really can also highlight the benefits in the way that I'm going to show you this example, okay? So if you want to take this example we're using, you could say, after you express how you're feeling about it, then you can follow that up with, would you be willing? So there's a couple phrases that I really like, and that's one, would you be willing? Are you able to? Is another really good one that I like as well. So let's use the would you be willing to. Would you be willing to take over the dishes and laundry so that I can focus on my physical recovery after birth? And then once you've asked and you've put your feelings out there and you've been vulnerable and you've talked about how that's making you feel and the need that you need from your partner, the next step is being able to listen with an open heart, right? And so if this is something that's not a strength for your partner, or it's something that he or she is overwhelmed with, that's when you have to get into this collaboration mode, into this problem-solving mode. And that could be a sign that maybe some of those things could be outsourced to your, postpartum support team. This is just an example, okay? There are thousands of other things that could be triggering for you, or could be difficult, or that are, that for sure that you're going to need help with once you sit down and do this list, right, with your partner. So that's really how to walk through these conversations using the nonviolent communication framework. And it's really going to allow you to create this environment of open communication, of give and take, of vulnerably bringing something to your partner and them very openly receiving it, and vice versa. So the last tip that I want to share, this, as you can see, is a very, very in-depth topic, but I hope just these highlights were helpful with starting to frame these conversations and having them with your partner. But the third strategy when it comes to these conversations overall that I love sharing, and I shared a little bit about this in a reel and in a story this last week, but really scheduling in regular check-ins with your partner. So once you've established this and you've had the initial conversations, it's not done, right? Like, we need to be continually checking in with one another to see if there's adjustments that need to be made, or if things aren't going the way that you were hoping, or that you are feeling a lot of overwhelm because of something that maybe you didn't think about before, that all of a sudden you're seeing that it's, taking up a lot of your time, or it's just weighing on your mind. So having these regular check-ins can be really, really important, and scheduling them on your calendar, it can be a game changer, because you often hear, the saying where if it's not scheduled, it's not happening, right? And that can be very, very true, especially in the newborn phase, right? Like, you are just making it through the day half the time, right? Like, you are full on 24/7 baby duty. You are trying to get your rest in and to figure out your, if you're chest feeding, figuring out your, chest feeding process with baby, and getting to know them and their own cues and their sleep cues and all these things, right? And so if you expect to just like have the time come up where you can have these conversations, it will never happen, right? And that's a recipe for resentment building up again. So when you schedule these regular check-ins, for me and my husband, it is once a week, Saturday, because my husband's work week is weird. He goes Sunday through Wednesday. Typically, sometimes he goes, sometimes he has Wednesday off, but that really is kind of like our beginning to the following week. So we like to sit down Saturday night and we talk about, okay, how are things going? What do we need help with? How are you feeling overall about certain things, right? And this can go above and beyond what we're talking about right now with sharing the parental load. This can be sharing other things too, right? But really having that on our calendar is a way for us to make it a priority. And it's just that reminder, oh yeah, we need to have that quick check-in. And it doesn't have to be this formal, awkward sit down where you're like, here's my list of everything that I need to talk to you about, right? It's more of just that reminder to connect heart to heart. Let's figure out how you're doing. How am I doing? And let's figure out in this collaborative way on how we can help one another move through this. Okay, so those were my 3 strategies. We went pretty deep into the practicing listening with an open heart piece, because I really find that the nonviolent communication framework is super helpful in framing these conversations in a way that allows it to be more collaborative, and where we don't see as much like icky feelings or feeling defensive or reactive to how each other are feeling, right? So hopefully this was helpful. As you can tell, this is a very in-depth topic, and being able to really work with me one-on-one or in my group program on finding solutions for certain things that just aren't going to be able to be handled by you and your partner alone, or if you run into difficult conversations, whether it's with your partner or with, setting boundaries with family and friends, or trying to figure out all of these things, you don't have to do it alone. And I'm here to help you figure out and strategize ways to make this more effective for your particular situation. And so I want to encourage you again to schedule a call with me. Let's sit down. We can talk about what your goals are. We can talk about where you are in your perinatal journey. We can talk about maybe some gaps that you already know that you're going to have when it comes to your support. Or we can talk about what things that I see where you're doing really great and you have a great foundation here, but we have some opportunities for improvement and filling in gaps, in some other areas. And then we can talk about, knowing all of this, which way in which we can work together, whether it's in a one-on-one container or it's in the group program, would benefit you the most. So it all starts with booking the call. I am going to be in Mexico as of the time of this recording, June 15th. I'm leaving tomorrow, June 16th, 2023, for a week-long vacation, a connecting time with my husband. It is the first kid-free vacation we have had since the birth of my oldest nearly 7 years ago. So we are very excited. We've done little weekend trips here and there, but this is going to be for nearly a full week. We're going to be celebrating our 10-year anniversary. So I will not have availability for clarity calls during the week. I'm going to be completely connecting and disconnecting from everything else other than my husband and I. So I will get back to you if you want to schedule something after I return, and we can get something on the books. But yeah, so just go to that link I have in my bio for Instagram, folks, and for the description here on Facebook or in the comments, and schedule some time with me, because you deserve to feel supported and holistically prepared for your own transition into parenthood, for your birth, for all of the things that have to do with this exciting and frankly just crazy sometimes chapter in your life, becoming a parent. All right, I hope you found this helpful. If you have any questions and you're watching the replay, drop them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week after I get back from my trip. All right, bye everybody.